And who can forget the economic fallout? The sanctions on Russia are already taking their toll throughout the European Union.
Sanctions should always have a much larger effect on the Russian side than on our side. It's not our intention to impose sanctions that unnecessarily weaken our economy.
We are entering an unprecedented food crisis because other countries in the Middle East or Africa are very dependent on products from Ukraine and Russia to feed their population.
The pandemic already saw an increase in malnutrition throughout Africa, but now the new sanctions on Russia are making things worse. Russian fertilizer exports have been affected, and the price of food and fuel is rising.
The escalating Ukraine crisis has dealt a big blow to the East Africa hunger crisis. At the moment, it has sent prices of key commodities such as grains, fertilizer, oil skyrocketing. It's really impacting especially the poorest and most vulnerable who are struggling with affording that.
The United Nations is already speaking up about this.
The Ukrainian people are enduring a living hell, and the reverberations are being felt worldwide with skyrocketing food, energy and fertilizer prices threatening to spiral into a global hunger crisis.
Oil traders are now predicting that the price of petroleum could go up to $200 per barrel by the end of 2022. Around the world, many observers have got to be asking themselves, is sticking it to Russia really worth all of this? The impact of these global events could be quite hard to undo. Caleb Maupin, RT, New York.
Well, on this, we spoke with economist Todd Horwitz, who said increasing EU sanctions on Russia could cause more conflicts due to food chain disruptions.
Well, I don't know that the sanctions are going to hurt as much as they think. I think this is a misplay by our president. What everybody forgets to talk about is that Russia and Ukraine produce about 1/3 of the world's wheat supply. Okay, I think we're going to have a food shortage versus a shortage of fuel, and I think that will cause more wars than has in history. Because again, if you can't eat, you're going to get angry, and of course, there's a lot of areas that are very much hot pockets for violence when there's no food. One being, Egypt and the Middle East, because they can't grow their own wheat, and besides that, the fertilizer components that are produced in Russia and Ukraine are going to be limited as well. So I think President Biden and the rest of the world have overplayed their hand because Russia has such a big part of the food supply.
Sky-high energy prices have plagued Europe for the past few months, and now sanctions against Russia are fueling further discontent by propelling those costs to never-before-seen levels, and that's led to frustration in many countries, including Spain. Dozens of lorries and cement mixtures have occupied highways around the Spanish capital. An improvised march that started at Atletico Madrid's football stadium was held to slow traffic and draw attention to drastically rising food and fuel prices in the capital and indeed countrywide. Elsewhere in Spain, a highway leading to Portugal was blocked when fishermen in the town of Ayamonte set fire to a wall of tyres to protest the spiralling cost of fuel. Spain has been gripped by demonstrations staged by various trade unions. In an effort to address the problem, the government has offered truckers a rebate and one-time cash payment. But the group behind the protest has rejected the offer and vowed to keep up protests, quote, indefinitely. And let's take you to neighbouring France. Rising fuel, energy prices, as well as overall living costs have reignited the Yellow Vest protest movement. Ahead of next month's presidential election, protesters have accused candidates of failing to understand their concerns. And in Greece, the Prime Minister has admitted that the huge, unprecedented sanctions against Russia, quote, actually do bite back home. Referring to rising energy costs, he warned that the EU should be careful not to let the measures damage Europe more than Moscow. We received reaction from political commentator Anthony Webber, who believes EU countries who sanction Moscow end up sanctioning themselves.
The problem with countries, particularly the UK, deciding to bring about sanctions against Russia is the government never thought about the consequences on the UK of such sanctions And the same applies to other European countries who've embarked on sanctions. So, of course, there have been protests in a number of European countries. I do think that pressure will start to show on Western governments in particular, because obviously populations can't sustain these very heavy rises in the cost of living. So I think it's very important to have a complete change of policy and realise that countries who sanction Russia end up sanctioning themselves. And that is a policy of lunacy as far as I can see it.